Good morning, St. Joseph Angels. It is September, and it is time for our first virtue of the month for this school year. And we talked the other day, so we know that our first virtue this month is the word hope. And hope means trusting in God's plan, So in other words, it's not always about what I want or what I think I should do, but it's trusting that God knows what's best for me. And He has some expectations that He lays out for us to help us become the best version of ourselves. And we need to trust in those expectations. For example, you might think about the 10 Commandments. He tells us things like we need to obey our parents, and we need to go to church on Sundays, and we shouldn't be jealous of our friends and the things that they have. Those kinds of expectations that God lays out for us help us to live the best life that we can, become the best version of ourselves, and we have to trust that He knows what's best for us. So hope is trusting. For those of you who are a little bit older students, you're going to learn that hope is one of the theological virtues. We talk about faith, hope, and love together. So that's one of the theological virtues. Also, we use hope sometimes when we're talking. We use hope to mean I wish. I hope I win the soccer game. I hope that I get an A on my test. I hope that my mom lets me play at my friend's house. That means like to wish. You could put wish in the blank. Instead of saying, I hope I win my soccer game, you might say, I wish we would win the soccer game. I wish that my mom would let me play at my friend's house. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Christian hope. Christian hope is a little different. Christian hope means certainty, for sure, absolutely. It's not a wish. It is we know for certain. We don't wish that God's plan for us was the best, or we don't wish that God had the best in mind for us. We know He does. We are certain He does. That's hope, certainty. And we know that if we trust in God's plan, that He will help us get to heaven. And His plan will help us get to heaven if we live up to the expectations that He has for us, and we accept Him, then He will help us get to heaven. We know that for certain. That is Christian hope. Hope also allows us to suffer with joy. And you're like, what? How can we suffer and be joyful? Absolutely we can, because we know for certain that we have hope that there is more to our life than what's happening right now on earth. Our earthly life is a short time. It is not for eternity. It's just as a short time that God allows us to be on earth. And you might think about someone who is really sick. Maybe they have cancer, or they're going through a really difficult time. Bad things happen in our world, and that's very difficult. But even during those times, we can have hope and be joyful because we know that God has a plan for us, and that plan is bigger than what's happening right now. So think about that in your school day. Maybe you have a friend that says something mean to you, or maybe a class isn't going the way that you wanted it to. Some homework was kind of hard, or you didn't get the grade on a test that you wanted. Instead of letting that dwell in us and bring us down, we can still be joyful and know this is passing. And as long as I live by God's expectations, then I can have hope that things will get better and will improve. Remember, it's not about what I want, it's about what God wants for us. And sometimes God puts people in our lives that help us to walk that path that He wants for us. Your parents, for example, He puts those in our life to help, they can help guide us in the right direction. And your teachers, the same thing. Your teachers know what's best for you. So if you trust in your teachers, and your teachers are helping you live God's plan, then you can be very joyful about that. We also know that hoping in earthly things here on earth, like being wealthy or being popular or being in a place of power, we know hoping in those things is foolish, because those things don't last. They only last as long as we're here on earth. They don't last forever. The only thing that lasts forever is God and heaven, right? God and heaven, those are for eternity. And so that's where we should put our trust. That's where we should put our hope, not in these silly things. We talk about saints that live a model of virtue, and a couple of them came to mind today. Saint Joseph, our very own Saint Joseph that our school is named after, he is definitely a model of hope. He definitely trusted in God's plan. Let's think about that. The birth of Jesus, he was not expecting to find out that Mary was going to have a baby. And he almost was like, oh no, I'm not going to marry her. I don't think so. That wasn't my plan. But instead an angel came to him and said, hey, Saint Joseph, or Joseph, it's okay. This is God's plan for you. And Joseph trusted in that plan, and he, married Mary and was the earthly father to Jesus. So he trusted. But then Jesus is born, and the next thing happens. We have King Herod come along, and he was not a good person. And Joseph knew that his baby and his wife were in danger from King Herod. And so he trusted in God's plan of fleeing to Egypt. So here Joseph is with this new wife and this little baby, and they flee to Egypt and stay there until they know it's safe for them to come back. So what a leap of faith, of trust, of hoping in God's plan that took for St. Joseph to do those things. So he is a great model for us. And then how about Noah? Think about Noah. God says, hey, the rain's going to come and it's going to destroy the earth. So I need you to build an ark. I need you to build this big boat to save the animals. And Noah could have been like, oh, that's crazy talk. But no, he didn't do that. He trusted that God in God's plan, and he built the ark. And we have that great story of Noah's ark. And not a saint yet, not yet anyway, working on it, is our very own Father Shockey. If you've ever talked to Father Shockey, you know that God's plan for him was for him to become a priest, right? So he serves us as our priest, and we see him in Mass, and we see him around the building. But did you know that was not Father Shockey's plan for himself? Father Shockey did not. He kind of ran from that calling that God was giving him, and Father was like, oh no, I don't want to be a priest. I want to get married. I want to have children. He talks about wanting to have a house with a fence and dogs and children, but eventually Father knew that was not God's plan for him, and he listened and he answered the call to become a priest. And so Father Shockey showed great trust in God's plan. So that is my challenge for you this month. How can you live out God's plan? How can you listen to your parents and your teachers and trust that they are helping you find God's plan for yourself? And that it's not always about what you want, but it's about what God has in mind for you. A great place to do that is in prayer, right? Just talk to God. Ask him, God, what's your plan for me? Sometimes talking to God, we hear the answer, we hear it in our hearts. Sometimes just sitting in silence, we hear God's talking to us in our hearts. So that's my goal for you. Talk to God, find out his plan for you. Have a great day.